Sergeant Josh Carter had just returned from deployment to find that his home had been seized and sold at auction by a corrupt HOA. The mastermind behind it all, Melissa Turner, a power-hungry HOA president who exploited fabricated fines and shady deals to steal homes from unsuspecting owners. But Melissa didn't count on Josh's brother, Ethan, stepping in with the full force of military advocates, national media, and the law. And wait until you hear how the courtroom battle exposed Melissa's entire operation and changed the game for good. It was near the end of Ethan Carter's shift at the auto repair shop when his phone buzzed on the counter. He wiped his greasy hands and glanced at the screen. Mom. A tight knot formed in his chest. His mother rarely called during work hours. He answered quickly. Hey, Mom. What's going on? Her voice cracked, trembling. Ethan, they sold Josh's house. His heart skipped. What? Who sold it? The HOA, she whispered. They auctioned it off. Ethan's vision swam, and his grip on the counter tightened. This was impossible. Josh, his older brother, had always kept things in order. His mortgage was automated, bills were paid, and Ethan held power of attorney. There was no way his brother's home could have been foreclosed. Where are you? Ethan asked. He didn't need more details. The panic in his mother's voice said everything. He grabbed his keys and raced out the door. When he pulled up to Josh's house, the sight was even worse than he expected. A moving truck sat in the driveway, men tossing Josh's belongings like garbage, his couch, his TV, his military awards. And standing on the porch, clipboard in hand, barking orders like a general, was Melissa Turner, the HOA president. Ethan had clashed with her before, years ago when Josh bought the house, and she tried fining him for having the wrong shade of blue on his door. But this was something else entirely. He slammed his truck door with enough force to make it reverberate down the street and stormed up to the porch, fury radiating from every step. Who the hell gave you the right to do this? Melissa's indifferent expression flickered, and she offered him a smirk that screamed condescension. Mr. Carter, I was wondering when you'd show up. Ethan's rage surged, but he kept his composure, barely. What's going on here? Melissa glanced at her clipboard as if she were tired of the whole conversation. This property was auctioned last week for unpaid HOA fees. Unpaid fees. Ethan repeated, his voice rising. My brother is deployed. His mortgage is paid. He owes you nothing. She sighed dramatically, as though explaining something to a child. He violated HOA policy by leaving the house vacant for over 6 months without filing the required absence paperwork. That's considered abandonment under our rules. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. Abandonment. His voice was barely a whisper, filled with disbelief. He's overseas, fighting for this country, and you're telling me you stole his house over a technicality? She gave him the smuggest smile. The law is the law, she said, unapologetic. If you have a problem, take it up in court. The sale is final. Ethan's hands balled into fists. Then he noticed the police officer standing nearby, arms crossed, watching them like it was just another day. Ethan turned to him, desperate. You're going to let this happen? This is theft. The officer shifted, clearly tired. Sir, this is a civil matter. If you have an issue, go through legal channels. That was all he had to offer. Ethan's entire body trembled with rage. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a calculated scam, and Melissa knew exactly what she was doing. She had orchestrated all of it. He turned back to her, his eyes locked with hers, burning with fury. She smirked again, daring him to do something. That's when Ethan made his decision. If they wanted a fight, he would give them a war. Later, Ethan sat at his kitchen table, his laptop open and surrounded by mountains of paperwork, bank statements, HOA documents, military records. His eyes burned from exhaustion, but the fire in his chest was only growing stronger. Exhaustion weighed on him, but he wasn't stopping. 2 days had passed since the HOA had stolen Josh's house. 2 days of frantic phone calls, meetings, and legal consultations. 2 days of dissecting every inch of their so-called foreclosure. And what Ethan discovered was far worse than he ever imagined. At first, Ethan had thought this might be a simple case of HOA overreach, an overblown application of some ridiculous bylaw. But the deeper he dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't a mistake. This was fraud. A calculated, predatory crime. The fines were completely fabricated. The HOA claimed Josh's lawn was neglected, even though he had a landscaping service maintaining it bi-weekly. They accused him of violating security regulations. His military-approved security system was deemed unauthorized surveillance by the HOA, despite several neighbors having the same setup. And they had never notified Josh or his mortgage lender about the foreclosure. Legally, a foreclosure requires certified notices to both the homeowner and their lender. The HOA had skipped that step entirely. The final blow? The buyer, Melissa Turner's cousin. It was an inside job from the start. Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. His stomach twisted. How many others had they done this to? Because Melissa had made one thing clear: we've done this before. The worst part? The sale was set to go through in less than a week, and if that happened, reversing it would be nearly impossible. The HOA knew exactly what they were doing. Ethan called lawyer after lawyer. Some refused to take the case, others demanded astronomical fees. Finally, he found David Callahan, a ruthless real estate attorney known for taking down corrupt HOAs. Ethan met Callahan in his office, a cluttered, no-nonsense space with legal books piled high and a coffee cup that read, "Sue first, ask questions later." After hearing the full story, Callahan leaned back, his voice low. "This is bad, but it's also illegal as hell." Ethan exhaled. "So, we can stop them?" Callahan nodded. "We file an emergency injunction today. If we can get a judge to halt the sale, we buy time to expose their actions." Ethan clenched his jaw. "And if the judge denies it?" Callahan's face darkened. "Then your brother's house is gone." Ethan's fists clenched. He wouldn't let that happen. Later that day, he drove back to the HOA office. He needed to see Melissa Turner's face when she realized he wasn't backing down. The office was a sterile, soulless space with cheap posters plastered on the walls about community pride, making Ethan sick. Melissa was behind her desk, sipping coffee like she hadn't just orchestrated a criminal scheme. She looked up, and her lips curled into a smirk. Well, she drawled, "Mr. Carter. To what do I owe the pleasure?" Ethan didn't waste time. He slammed a thick folder onto her desk. "This," he said, his voice icy, "is a copy of the emergency injunction I just filed against you." Melissa blinked, caught off guard for a split second, but then her smirk returned. "Oh, Ethan," she chuckled, shaking her head. "You really think you can win?" Ethan didn't flinch. "I don't think. I know." Melissa leaned back in her chair, unfazed. "Let me explain how this is going to go. By the time you step foot in a courtroom, the house will already be transferred. Once the deed is recorded, reversing it will be a legal nightmare." Ethan gritted his teeth. She tilted her head, studying him like a cat toying with its prey. "We've done this before," she said, her voice dripping with amusement. "Do you really think you're the first one to try and fight us?" Ethan's breath came slow and steady, but inside, he was seething. He had 1 week to stop the transfer. 1 week to tear down an entire corrupt system. Melissa thought she had already won. She had no idea what was coming. Ethan sat at his kitchen table later that night, phone in one hand, laptop open in front of him. His coffee had gone cold, but he didn't care. The injunction had bought him time, but he needed more than just legal power. He needed real firepower. Melissa's confidence, "We've done this before," meant there were other victims. And Ethan knew that HOAs thrived on silence. They counted on people to roll over, assuming they had no power against the system. This time, though, they'd picked the wrong house, the wrong soldier, the wrong family. Ethan took a deep breath and began making calls. Josh wasn't just a soldier. He was a decorated Army sergeant with nearly a decade of service and multiple deployments. He was respected in the military community. And Ethan knew one thing: America didn't tolerate screwing over a deployed soldier. So he went to war. He reached out to military advocacy groups, veterans organizations. Ethan knew that anyone with the means to stand up against corrupt HOAs needed to be equipped with legal defense funds. So he contacted not just local reporters, but national outlets, ones that thrived on exposing government corruption. Within 48 hours, the story went viral. Army sergeant has home stolen by HOA in shocking foreclosure scam. Military family left homeless while soldier serves overseas. The HOA had auctioned off a veteran's house while he was deployed. The backlash was instant. Veterans groups rallied for action, and politicians, even a state senator, joined in, demanding an investigation. By the time Ethan stepped into the courtroom, the weight of the situation was overwhelming. Melissa Turner walked in with the same air of superiority she always carried. Her blazer crisp, her expression cool and controlled. But when she saw the packed courtroom, veterans, reporters, state officials, and military families, the first crack appeared in her composure. The judge, a no-nonsense federal figure, entered with a stern look. "Let's begin," he said. "Mr. Carter, your motion?" Ethan's lawyer, Callahan, stood. "Your Honor, we have evidence that the HOA, specifically its president Melissa Turner, illegally foreclosed on a soldier's home, violating the Service Members Civil Relief Act." The judge fixed Melissa with a piercing gaze. "Is this true?" Her lawyer, a slick man in an overpriced suit, stood up. "Your Honor, the auction followed state law. The HOA had every right to enforce its bylaws." The judge cut him off, his hand raised. "The Service Members Civil Relief Act takes precedence. Your client's auction was illegal. The foreclosure is void." Ethan's pulse raced as the judge turned to Melissa. "Additionally, based on the evidence of fraud and misconduct, I'm ordering a full investigation into this HOA's practices." Melissa's face drained of color. Her lawyer started to speak, but the judge silenced him. "This court does not tolerate actions that prey on military families. The sale is void, and I will ensure this case reaches the appropriate federal authorities." Melissa's calm shattered as she stood, panic creeping into her voice. "Your Honor, the auction was legal under state law." The judge's gavel came down hard. "The Service Members Civil Relief Act overrides state law," he snapped. "And frankly, Miss Turner, your ignorance of that tells me everything I need to know about how you run this HOA." Ethan glanced over at Melissa's cousin, the so-called buyer, who was now shrinking into his seat. It was over. Melissa knew it. The fallout was immediate and unforgiving. The HOA, once a close-knit group of power-hungry individuals, was now in free fall. Melissa Turner was at the center of it all. Investigations revealed that Melissa had orchestrated similar schemes to seize properties from other homeowners, using false fines and backdoor auctions to sell them to her inner circle. But this time, she had picked the wrong target. With the ruling and the media frenzy, Melissa was forced to resign. Lawsuits flooded in, her assets were frozen, and she faced criminal charges. Her once pristine reputation lay in ruins. Her own home, the one she'd ruled over with an iron fist, was now up for sale. And just like that, Melissa Turner vanished. Without her, the HOA board was dismantled. Investigations revealed they had embezzled thousands, funneling the money into luxury perks for themselves. The fraudulent sales were overturned, fines voided, and the lawsuits continued. In the end, the HOA was forced to settle for a huge amount, including compensation for Josh. Justice had finally prevailed. When Josh returned home, he expected a battle. But instead, he found an entire community waiting for him. Veterans, neighbors, families, cheering in his driveway with a banner that read, "Welcome home, Sergeant Carter." Josh placed his duffel bag down, his throat tight. He turned to see Ethan, arms crossed, grinning. "Told you I had your back," Ethan said. Josh chuckled softly. "I owe you." Ethan shrugged. "Just buy me a beer." Josh laughed, feeling a peace he hadn't in months. The HOA wasn't gone, but it had been rebuilt. The new president, a retired veteran, had one clear rule as his first act in office. Never again shall an HOA have the power to foreclose on a service member's home. Melissa had tried to ruin Josh, but in the end, she had rewritten the rules in his favor. This time, justice had truly won.